Hi there. So a common question in faculty interviews and also for senior postdoc positions is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That is a pretty standard question that is often asked, and it just asks, do you have a vision for where you are going to go? That is slightly more long-term than just the next year or so, or the next experiment. So I think it's okay to start with some general points, but then you also would need to be more specific. So I think the general points can be some of the following. It could be, I hope to have established myself in my field of science, let's say environmental science or ecology, and I hope to have made a solid track record of publications in 5 years. You could say, I envision myself prioritizing mentoring and education the next generation of scientists. This is definitely a good goal and it's part of your job. I hope to have secured stable funding would be another one of those general statements, and maybe some of this funding to be collaborative with my colleagues. I will have established a solid and very good and productive international scientific network, could be a general goal. Your goal could also be that my research has an impact on society. And it could be really any of these. These are just some suggestions, but I think they are all very general good goals to mention. That basically would be part of the lead-in sentence of that answer, basically. And then you would transition to your, specific goals. And here's some thoughts on those. Now, the first thing about the specific goals is that people want to know, beyond these general goals, do you have actually a vision of how to get there? And is that a realistic vision? And do you know what you need and what you need to do in order to achieve these goals? So that is quite another step from these general goals that I just mentioned. And that definitely requires some thinking ahead of time. I don't think you can come up with these answers on the spot during the interview, so I think you need to prepare yourself for these answers and chart a course for basically you see yourself in a more long-term perspective. So first of all, you would come up with a clear perspective of where you want to be specifically. For example, this could be, I want to understand the role of microplastic pollution in ecosystems, or terrestrial ecosystems and the soil, for example. Or I want to really make a step change in our understanding of joint impacts of many simultaneous environmental drivers, let's say, for example. Or I really want to have a better understanding of the role of mycorrhizal fungi in agriculture using state-of-the-art molecular ecology tools. Those are some examples of statements that are much more specific. They're not the titles of individual papers. They describe a more specific research goal that is attainable over a period of maybe about 5 years plus. So this is what you need to think through. What is a realistic goal for you to achieve in about 5 years? This doesn't need to be, breakthrough type things. It should be something ambitious, but it should still be realistic. People can see this is doable after 5 years of work. And one very useful thing to think about is, what is your long-term career goal? Maybe your long-term career goal would be something to have a better understanding of soil biodiversity responses to global change or something, or a better understanding of global change effects on terrestrial ecosystems. And then a subset of that would be more like the 5-year goal. And so that is very nice, because then, you may have immediate goals for what is your next grant, but then you have a 5-year goal for what you want to achieve over the next 5 years. And then you have also a more long-term goal where that feeds into. And so I think if you have these 3 worked out before the interview, you're doing really well, I think. So, because this is not easy, you would say, my first grant, I would write on that. It's a specific grant. It's a 3-year project, and that is going to result in like 1 paper or a few papers, 3 papers. Then the 5-year goal is larger than that, of course. It has a bigger topic and maybe several grants which will feed into that. And then your long-term goal is maybe where you see your career go. What is going to be the mark that you leave? What are going to be the couple sentences that are going to be in a textbook on ecology or whatever from your work in the end? That maybe is a bit more uncertain, because things can change, of course, and should. If they're interesting, they're likely to change. But I think it doesn't hurt to sort of have this vision for what is going to be the first grant that I write. That is also a question that's often asked. What is your sort of 5-year medium term? This is always worded differently a little bit, of course. It doesn't need to be the 5-year plan, but what is it like your immediate couple-year plan until you maybe earn tenure? And if you have a tenure system, and then afterwards, what are you going to long-term career plans? So I think it's good to have them sort of in your mind's eye. What is also very good in answering that question is, in the specific way, come up with a way how you can achieve a part of your goal or an interesting part of that 5-year perspective in collaborating with members from your future department that is interviewing you. And that adds a substantial amount of value to your answer, because then people can see how you have thought about how you could connect with people that are there. Not just a single fighter, single PI doing their own thing, heads down and through with their program, but how are they going to be a valuable member of the departmental team? And that means in the end you can say, well, I can envision something like a research unit on this broader topic that would feed into my 5-year, 10-year research goal. That is also going to be interesting for other research members in your department, for example. And these members could be, and then you name them. I think that is an optimal answer that you can do. I mean, you can do that research. It doesn't take that long to figure out who in the department does what. You come up with an idea that you are playing around with anyway, that is a broader scope of what you're working on. Maybe it's more organism groups, maybe it's across different ecosystems, maybe it's using totally different approaches. Adds value basically to your research question you're pursuing or your research program, and it adds value to the department, makes the department overall better. Then it is very good if you emphasize what you need in order to achieve this. You know, maybe you need access to a field site. Maybe you need access to certain equipment. Maybe you need to have certain colleagues with certain expertise around. And of course, ideally, this happens to be just at the place where you're applying, because you have done the research, you know there is this field site, you know there is this equipment in the core facility, you know there are the colleagues with just the expertise that you need to do that. This makes people feel that you are going to be making optimal use of all the various things that this particular department has to offer. So you make the department better, you make yourself better, everybody wins. This is what people want to hear. And then of course you would state why this is important to do. You know, maybe this will help us transition towards a more sustainable agriculture, maybe this will help us mitigate climate change or global change, and this is why there's going to be a high degree of interest. And then the last bit that feeds directly into what you've just said about why this is so important is, how will you fund it? Have you thought through what instruments are available in that particular university, country, state, or whatever that could be used to fund this kind of endeavor? Have you got a mental image of the funding landscape of this country? Do you know what's generally possible within the major funding agencies of that country that you're applying for? And so an example statement could be like this. Of course, this can be embellished with to be a couple minutes long, but you could say something like that. My long-term goal is to achieve such and such. And during my first 5 years here, I want to make decisive progress towards the milestone of this and that. I can engage in collaborations with the other department members because they would help me do this and that and increase the scope in such and such a way to help me achieve part of these goals. And this would also have the added benefit of adding this particular question, approach, theory, or whatever it is, to the portfolio of the department. To achieve this, I will need to make use of several facilities that are locally available, like the core facility X, Y, and the field site ABC, or whatever it is. And this is important because society really needs answers to the question of whatever it is. And this is why I believe there's a really good chance to get this work funded by funding agency X. I think if you can work this out before the interview, you have the perfect answer to that question. And it is an important question. With that, good luck with thinking about this with your interview, getting the job offer, and thanks for watching. See you next time.